Hello and thank you for joining me. Now, the main theme of this video is going to be the subject of free speech. But you'll forgive me if before I get on to the main subject matter, I just want to briefly discuss uh, a very remarkable man who's just passed away by the name of Stanislav Petrov. Mr. Petrov was a Soviet Air Force um, colonel, I believe, was his rank. And he passed away a few days ago at the age of 77. But in 1983, at the height of the Cold War, he almost single handedly, well, really essentially single handedly, averted all out nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States on the grounds that there was a malfunction in the Soviet missile detection system that made it look like there was incoming missiles from the United States. Now, in the position that he was in, he could have made the decision to order retaliatory strikes, and he chose not to. It was later confirmed that it had, in fact, been a malfunction and there weren't incoming American missiles. So he sadly passed away, but a remarkable man who possibly saved all of us. I mean, it really is. I feel he should be a lot better known. But anyway, I just felt I had to mention that rather than making an entire video about it. I want to talk briefly about the subject of freedom of speech because it is so very important. I came across a quotation earlier, um, and I'm aware you need to be cautious with quotations on the internet, but I think this is probably authentic. And it's a quotation, cited quotation by Jordan B. Peterson, who's become a well known Canadian professor, well known for his robust defense of free speech and for controversial, politically incorrect viewpoints. But anyway, uh, this is his statement. I regard free speech as a prerequisite to a civilized society because freedom of speech means that you can have combat with words. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that people can happily and gently exchange opinions. It means that we can engage in combat with words in the battleground of ideas. And the reason that that's acceptable and why it's acceptable that people's feelings get hurt during that combat is that the combat of ideas is far preferable to actual combat. Um, just a bit of background, he's been known for his stance on transgender issues. But anyway, I think that's a very interesting and thought provoking take on free speech. I think sometimes we make a mistake of feeling that debate has to be sometimes too sugar coated with etiquette. Of course, you don't want the opposite situation where people are just yelling at each other and throwing ad hominem attacks. That doesn't really get anywhere either. But part and parcel of free speech is being blunt. And at times that will mean that people are offended. Now, my own take on free speech is that it basically is without limitation so long as what you are pontificating in terms of your opinion isn't physically hurting other people by posing a threat. So I would be interested in Professor Peterson's views, for example, on cyberbullying or something like that. I'm not sure what his views are, but clearly there's certain types of speech that can be used to hurt other people. So if you're advocating, specifically advocating violence, like, I don't like these people, let's go and burn their homes, right? That's a specific advocacy of violence. So that's when there is a dividing line and you're crossing a line from simply saying, I don't like these people, to actually encouraging violence against them. Likewise, if you are, for the sake of argument, let's say there's a kid in a school who stands out, or even in a workplace, a person who stands out in the workplace, and one of their colleagues or one of their classmates don't like them, they decide to stick their picture online and then encourage others to laugh at them and so on. So, cyberbullying, for example, it's very specific. So, I think it's a little naive to say that free speech is harmless. Clearly, it's not. Clearly there is responsibility that comes with free speech. So I'd be interested in hearing more of Professor Peterson's ideas on this and what his take on that would be. Um, it was actually a friend of mine posted that, so I would, well, an acquaintance of mine posted it, so I would need to look a bit more into that. I think there is responsibility with free speech. I don't think you could just say, well, anything goes. But, and this is a very big but, we must cherish the concept of being able to speak our mind without violent or legal repercussions. Now, in democratic societies, this is one of the hallmarks of democracy. That goes without saying, but sometimes we take it for granted, and I think we also have to be very careful not to just assume that it can never be under threat. Not just assume that, oh, well, we live in the UK, we live in the US, we have free speech guaranteed. Just because we hold it dearly doesn't mean it can never potentially be threatened by changes in law and so on. And we really, really need to keep our eye on the ball because any law, for example, that is designed to protect one group over others, that can then lead to dangers in terms of the flexibility of free speech and open discussion. But I look around the world and I look at parts of the world where you can be killed for having an opinion, or you can go to jail for having an opinion. And I feel so grateful that I am in a country which, by and large, you can more or less say what's on your mind. You can be challenged and you can maybe, you could be vilified, you could be attacked. So the situation is not perfect. But I look at, for example, and this is going to offend people, but that's consistent with the nature of this video. I look at a country like Thailand, where their extremely rigid lèse majesté laws means that even a perception, it doesn't matter if it's real or not, a perception of criticizing the monarchy will land you in jail for up to 15 years. And if you're lucky enough to not go to jail, then you run the risk of being attacked physically, violently, by crazy royalist mobs. I've got little respect for hardcore Thai royalists. I'm not talking about regular people, I'm talking about the really hardcore ones who are prepared to use violence to basically shut up people who have a different point of view. I think I've no respect for them. I think they're scumbags, to be quite honest. But there's other examples around the world. If you look at Islamic theocracies, if you look at the way that blasphemy laws are rigidly imposed, and there's a death penalty for people. Only a few days ago, a man was arrested for mocking Muhammad on WhatsApp, and he's facing the death penalty. This is, to me, it's terrifying that we live in a world where this happens. And what I find astonishing is that there are people who are more offended by someone's offensive opinion than by the fact that there are laws out there that are used to persecute people simply for their viewpoint. Now, clearly, common sense comes into it. If someone says they support ISIS, common sense dictates that person should be investigated. And if they are shown to be sympathetic to this terrorist organization to the point where they would volunteer for them or whatever, absolutely there should be legal action. So, of course, common sense comes into it when people are showing sympathy to violent organizations or to violence. But we must protect the right to offend. We must protect the right to be controversial. And I am very concerned that although we largely value free speech in democratic societies, it doesn't mean that this is cast in stone. There are attempts, there have been attempts to try and criminalize opinions. I mean, around the transgender issue, there is some jurisdictions in Canada and the United States that are pushing to make it a criminal offence to misgender someone, i.e., to give them the wrong pronoun, even if it's a mistake. So, if you believe that someone who is born biologically male, i.e., with a penis, has chosen to transition to a woman, but you can't accept that because you believe in biology, then you could be committing a criminal offence if this legislation goes ahead. I believe it was in New York State. So we really, really, really have to be assertive. and not allow respect for our fellow citizens to get to the point where we are being ultra careful that if we offend someone, we're going to end up in legal trouble. I think that is a very, very dangerous area. The Blair government came under scrutiny for this because under the Blair administration, that government introduced a religious hate bill, which was basically designed to protect um, Muslims and other groups, but specifically Muslims, from perceived discrimination or perceived hate crimes. Now, hate crime is a terrible thing. If that means that, people are being physically attacked and mosques are being vandalized or whatever, that's clearly wrong, and there should be legal action against that. But saying, for example, I believe Islam is a violent religion, no way, no way should anyone be facing legal action for that sort of statement. It's not the same as saying that you hate all Muslims. I would even contend that making that statement, divisive and inflammatory as it is, even that shouldn't result in a criminal offence. Certainly, bigotry should be challenged, but we have to be very, very careful that there is a right to be controversial, a right to offend. But there should also be the right, and this is very important, with free speech, and this is what anyone who believes in this has to also accept, is that if someone is offended, they also have a right to say that they're offended and say, I think this is wrong. So, for example, if you get comedians that make a really crass joke about a disaster, people have the right to say, I think this comedian is a piece of shit for using this for their act. So freedom of speech also includes actually the right to express offence. And sometimes people say it doesn't, but I believe it does. The point is free speech should be consistent and utilitarian. Anyway, I'm going to round this up because my battery's running low. Let me know your thoughts. By the nature of this video, inevitably some of the things I've said will be offensive. Maybe Thai royalists watching this will be offended. Maybe hardcore conservative Muslims will be offended. So be it. It's part and parcel of the nature of this video. And if YouTube censors this, that would be a travesty. I'm not saying they will, but you know, we have to really be careful because there has been moves to bring this to the UN. Conservative Islamic countries have tried to make blasphemy recognized at UN level. That should absolutely be something that every democracy that values freedom of expression should robustly challenge. And as long as I breathe, I will challenge any law I believe threatens basic freedom of expression. But like I say, the caveat is, or the responsibility is, if a speech is being used to encourage violence or discrimination or bullying against someone, that is going beyond simply an opinion and it's turning into an action. I also think that sometimes free speech can be misused. So, for example, the paparazzi use it to claim that their actions, oh, it's our free speech.